some of the early vehicles that first had electric fuel pumps in the tank, they used to actually give you an access plate to replace it without having to take the gas tank out. Here's another fuel tank, and well, that had just been topped off when that happened. I got lucky there wasn't a spark. That little mishap. The center of this tank is 15 inches, right in the center. This is going to be right in the center of the gas tank. To pretty well get the fuel gauge pickup and the pump, it needs to be about 1 foot wide. 1 foot here, roughly right in between these two bumps here. And let's see here. I can roughly say that the front of the tank is about along this line here. So you cut it here and here. I need to figure out how far back I need to cut it. I think perhaps definitely don't want to. There's definitely not any structural components in this area. There are here, and there are back here. There shouldn't be anything in this area right here. I hate to take this nice sound deadening material off, but it's got to be done. You know, maybe I should rethink this before I go and cut too much out, because I'm afraid that if I cut it around here, I mean, I can almost see that give a little bit. Maybe. But that would be very difficult to put another piece of metal on here and, you know, rivet some sheets of metal after shaping them and try to put self-tapping screws here to put it back on. A more simplified way in this case, since I have another tank to look at, or you could go to a junkyard and find a car exactly like yours. A lot of junkyards pull the gas tanks anyway and leave them inside the car. So I think a better idea would be for me to measure from the front of that tank, which I've concluded is about here. That way I can measure, let's see, I believe it's about 6 inches from here to here, and then at the 13-inch level would be the other side. So I may be able to just take out a hole here, which would be much easier to take a piece of sheet metal and just bend it over this, and it would probably be fairly flush, and then put self-tapping screws to hold it down. Because I can see how there'd be a problem, you know, if you did put it down here, you know, if some heavy person got on the seat, or somebody stacked about 1,500 pounds of newspaper bundles here, that could be a problem. But here you wouldn't be taking out too much strength. So I may try that. The front of the tank here, 6 inches, and then 13 inches. That way I cut out between 6 and 13. right in the center. It should be right over where the fuel pump is. And perhaps I could trim out a little more over here and then access the fuel gauge pickup. Okay, what I did is I got a piece of 1/2-inch metal conduit and I cut it just so only this much of the bit will go through, because I don't want to add to my problems by drilling into something that I don't want to. Just a hole big enough that I can get my metal clippers in here. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Now I've got my access for the pickup for the fuel gauge. This will be so convenient. The last time I had to replace this fuel pump, it was in the middle of winter. Unless you're really well off, you don't have a building, so you have to work out in the cold, and it was so unpleasant. I won't have to do that again. I could be inside the car out of the elements. What I have to do now is take the vice grips and kind of work these edges straight. I found a piece of metal. It's an old piece of a washing machine body, but I'm not rich, so I gotta make do with what I can find. I'm gonna cut a piece off of here that should properly cover that hole. It's 12 inches by 11 inches, and I'm gonna have to take and cut this and then try to fashion it into the right shape. Cut with old rusty metal. And the reason I chose this piece of metal because the thickness matches the car. The other stuff I thought I was going to use, it was just way too thin. Probably trim that bit. Trim that bit. Trim a pretty good bit of that. That over there. Better wait on this part till last. Okay, that's a little bit better. I think we'll have to trim it right here. Cut a little bit out and see what that looks like. I think I need to trim just a little bit more out of there. See what that does now. I think that about does it. I need to start hammering. Now for some nice soft ground to start with. I need to go check it and see how it fits now. This needs to be flat. I'll go see how this fits now. It's getting closer now. Let's see. This part needs to be a little more flat. This part needs to curve a little bit more. A much easier way would be if you could go to the junkyard, find the identical car, cut the piece out a little bit bigger so that it would fit onto the part you cut. That would be, well, may not necessarily be easier, especially if you have a long drive to a junkyard. Let me go see how this fits again. It's getting there. I need to trim a little off the back of here, and then maybe it'll fit a little better. It takes a little while, but I'll finally have it close enough that it'll work. to determine where it's safe to put a self-tapping screw. Right here looks like a safe spot. Right here looks like a safe spot. I got a flashlight here. Let's see. That looks like that. That's probably a safe spot for a screw. I've gone around underneath there with a flashlight and put dots everywhere I can safely put a screw. What I got here is these these self-tapping screws, 1/4 inch head. I believe these came from Walmart or somewhere. They're not that long, so that might be a little close to the tank there. Maybe not. We'll put it right on the edge. First, I will drill the holes through this, and then that way I won't have to try to go through both. I'd like to check this one first anyway to see just how far it goes. That'll be okay. Just start it with the drill and then put it in with a wrench, because every time I try to put it in with a drill on something like this, it just strips out anyway. And what I will do is go order myself a new fuel pump after I get the seat back in. Then hopefully that'll be in tomorrow or the next day. Then I can take this back off, go ahead and put a new fuel pump in here. And at that time I can put a better seal onto this cover. See, it fits about as well as it did before. I drove my 5 hours last night, and now I'm ready to pull this cover off and replace the fuel pump. That's easy, much easier than having to jack up the car, drain the gas, pull the tank out, all that stuff. This time I'm trying a Bosch. The Carter that was in there went 315,000 miles. That's a pretty good run for a fuel pump. I've changed my mind on changing the fuel sending unit. Remember, the fuel was right up to the top edge on this opening in the tank for the fuel pump, and this sending unit is half an inch lower. So if I took that sending unit out now, I'd have a mess with gasoline going everywhere all under the car. I'll have to do that at a later date when I've got the tank a little lower. Okay, what I'm going to do now is show you how I'm going to seal this up. The reason I put the paint was partially so that the surface is smoother, and what I did is smeared some grease on there so that I can put some silicone on here to make a seal, and when I put this on, it won't stick. I'll leave this to cure overnight. It should be fine for me to drive this car to work tonight. In the morning when I get home after the sun's out, I can pull this cover off and see how the seal turned out. Okay, here we go. Hopefully the grease is going to work for a release agent. Part of it didn't dry. Looks like some areas needed a little more silicone. I can add a little silicone to that, put a little more grease back on the cover and put it back down, and it'll be fine. By the next time I need a fuel pump replacement, which may be several years, hopefully the Bosch pump will give me 315,000 miles at least, like the old one. But the old one wasn't actually completely worn out at 315,000. I just didn't want to take the chance of getting stranded with it. Occasionally it would do little things like the engine would run not quite at the performance level that I'm accustomed to. Although the old one was still working fine, I just didn't want to take that chance. And I have to say that the new pump definitely improved the performance and fuel mileage. I guess most people out there don't drive a car this old, but if you do and you drive it a lot, like I do, about 1,000 miles a week, it can get to be quite a chore every time you have to pull that gas tank off. You know, in several years I have a fuel pump worn out or getting weaker. I need an easy way to not have to go through all that trouble every time. This wasn't a step-by-step video, but it did give you an idea. I find as I get older, I want to find ways to make my life a little easier. And this is one of those ways. Thank you for watching.